Hi, Gerald.
Hello.
Hello. I can hear you well. And today we're very excited to show you the Wireshark version 2 where it stands today. We'll be talking about and showing you release candidate 3. And Gerald will give you a little inside information about what's going on. Hopefully we'll get some more information about the potential release date of the final version, sort of depending on how things are going with the bug fixes or any other little enhancements that come along. Before we get started, I want to mention that on the right-hand side, all of you should have a control panel, and that control panel will condense all of a sudden. And there's a little red background with a white arrow on it. You just simply click that arrow and that will expand your control panel. On the control panel, there's a questions area where you can put in questions to Gerald or to me, or we also have on the line with us today Brenda and Jill. They're from Wireshark University, and they can answer questions about Wireshark training or anything having to do with the webinar, sort of the back end of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded right now, and once we finish this webinar today, I'll just be cleaning up the recording. I don't know if you guys can see this message on my screen, but we have hit our 1,000 person limit right now. So we have people that are being rejected from coming in. So anyway, so we're recording this session right now, and once this recording is finished, and I'm just going to clean up the beginning of it and just the end of it and put in any notes that we mentioned during the webinar. I'll just make sure that everything's all nice and clean for you. Then I will put it up online, and all of you will receive an email giving you the link. Most likely you can go to wireshark.org and find it probably in the news section, I think, Gerald. Does that sound like where it'd be a good spot for the video?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you don't get anything from me, within the next day, 24 hours, then maybe you want to take a look over at wireshark.org. I'll try to hurry up and get that up online for you. So again, we have the questions area on the right-hand side. If we don't get to the questions during the session, it's only because we have 1,000 people in this session and the questions are flying all over the place. So hopefully everybody can hear me all right, and you can all hear Gerald. And so we'll start moving forward here. This session is sponsored by Riverbed and Wireshark University. Riverbed, as you know, is where, or maybe you don't know, I don't know, that's where Gerald works. And if you haven't taken a look at the Riverbed's packet analyzer, it used to be called Pilot. That is one of the tools that can link in with this version of Wireshark. So if you want to be able to chart a graph and then sort of drill down into the packet level, that would be the ultimate tool for doing that. Wireshark University is the Wireshark Certified Network Analyst Program and Training System. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Oh, I'm so excited. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about the new Qt framework. We'll have Gerald, I'll put up a Wireshark screen, and we'll have Gerald talk a little bit about this Qt framework. We'll talk also about the USB PCAP piece, that if you do the installation, you'll see suddenly you have this new option. There's also an Android dump, and maybe we could talk about that too, Gerald. I will show you some of the streamlined behavior in this version of Wireshark. There are just a ton of places where I didn't even realize how many steps I had to go through to perform an operation, and these things have really been changed to make it much faster to work. There have been some changes to capture, so we'll look at that. And then I'm going to show you how to use the related packets feature, the intelligent scroll bar feature, to find issues in communications faster and to understand what's going on much quicker. We'll talk about the current project of translations for Wireshark. It's already been translated into a number of languages. Oh, yes, I'm still getting my full. I'm not sure if those show up on your screen, but I got all these messages saying that the webinar is full. And then I'll take you into the graph improvements, the IO graph and the TCP stream graphs. And we'll also go into following the TCP streams. Now on the right-hand side in your control panel, I wanted to call your attention to a handout. I've put up there a handout of an article that I just finished writing. It's just in draft form, but it lists a number of the changes in this version of Wireshark. So it's even more than we'll go through in this session. But I thought that would be a nice bullet list for you to take a look at if you're interested in knowing what's different. And again, if you came in after I mentioned it, we are recording this session. Recording will go up online. Check over at wireshark.org in the next 24 hours. And hopefully you'll be able to see that video. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, Gerald, and I will start out by, oh my goodness, I've got lots of things in the background here. Let me go ahead and bring up the new version of Wireshark. And do you want to take a moment, Gerald, and just explain a little bit about the Qt framework and let me know if you want me to open up any specific windows to show them?
Sure. The reason for this, the GUI framework we've used for the past 17 years is called GTK. And the GTK development team does a great job. The problem for us is that they primarily focus on Linux. That was actually great for me back when I started the project because I was a Linux-only guy. But as the project has grown, the Wireshark runs on a lot more platforms than just Linux. Most of our users by far use Windows, and quite a few use Mac OS, and quite a few use Linux as well. So when I started looking at modernizing the user interface, I kind of started looking at Qt, and as it turns out, it fits our use. Our use is a lot better. It supports Mac OS really well, it supports Windows really well, and it supports Linux really well. And it also kind of paves the way for other improvements. Someone keeps bugging me about running Wireshark on her iPad, and
who would that be?
We still can't do that, but it's at least possible with Qt. It's a lot more possible. It's a lot more likely, say, on Android than iOS, but Qt does have ports to those platforms, so that's kind of an exciting direction we maybe might or might not go in the future. I still don't know.
Okay. I think it would be interesting to show people side by side the comparison of the Qt interface here and the legacy interface. And, oh, sorry, my voice. I'm just going to come up here. When you install the release candidate version 1, which just came out yesterday, correct, Gerald?
RC3 came out yesterday.
RC3, yes. Release candidate 3 came out yesterday, yeah. When you install it, one of the default option is to install not only the Qt interface but also the legacy interface. So when you look on the right-hand side here, you can see that I have a choice of running Wireshark and Wireshark Legacy. Well, when I select Wireshark Legacy, we're talking about the GTK interface there. So right now you can actually see it in both interfaces at the same time using both interfaces. So I'm going to bring up these screens, my little fancy setup here. And what you're seeing is these are both release candidate version 3. You can see it in the title bar on the left-hand side, but the one on the left-hand side is the legacy interface, and the one on the right-hand side is the Qt interface. Now, Gerald, the legacy interface that we see there with GTK, I saw a note from you that will be supported up until version 2.2?
Well,
something like that?
My tentative plan is to drop it sometime in the near future, and it probably won't be in the 2.2 release.
So it'll be before that or after that?
It'll be before. We'll keep it in 2.0, but probably drop it in 2.2.
Okay. Okay. And for those of you that aren't aware of this, on the numbering scheme, the number that's right after the decimal point, the first decimal point there, if it's an odd number, it's a development version. If it's an even number, yes, that's a release version. So when Gerald talks about 2.2, that's actually the next stable release version that will come out publicly. So if you're just focusing on stable release versions, you'll go from 2.0 to 2.2. So you can already see a number of differences here. I'm going to start out by just taking you through some of the streamlined behavior, but we probably should mention USB PCAP, Gerald, and what that is all about. And I have a link here for information about USB PCAP. So during the installation process, when you go through this install of Release Candidate 3, you are prompted as to whether you want to install USB PCAP, kind of like you're prompted for WinPCAP if you're on a Windows system there. Gerald, do you want to talk about USB PCAP? Explain sort of why and...
USB PCAP, it's actually been around for a while. It's, like Laura said, it's very similar to WinPCAP. It just lets you capture on your USB bus instead of on your network interfaces. And this means that, like, for instance, my laptop has a USB Ethernet adapter. I can capture USB and Ethernet frames on top of that, and then whatever's of the Ethernet on top of that. So you can get into these kind of this layering issue. But it expands the options for Windows users as far as what they can capture. I remember when we added this and kind of mentioned it on Twitter, a lot of Linux users kind of said, well, we've had that for years. Well, yeah, Linux users have this for years, forever. On Linux, you can capture on USB, Bluetooth, your network interface, probably your sound card, I don't know. But
yeah.
But
for the Windows group.
Yeah, this is a cool and exciting thing for for Windows users. And it's hopefully going to be very useful.
Excellent. Okay. And again, that's one of the options that comes up during the install process. Those of you going out to wireshark.org and going and downloading RC3 will see that during the install process. Very similar to WinPCAP install. So let me take you through right now some of the streamlined behaviors in this version of Wireshark. And I'm going to be focusing on the Qt version throughout this presentation. Many of you are already very, very familiar with what we have here on the left-hand side with GTK, but keep in mind that that is the past and that the future is this Qt interface. So that's where I'm going to be focusing. So first of all, let me open up a trace file. Let's see, I have one right here, HTTP WinPCAP. All the trace files that I open up in here are available to you online at the Wireshark book website. And let me just bring this up. Oh, I don't want this guy out here. There we go. Here's another link I'm mentioning. But you can go to wiresharkbook.com and you can go get the trace files related to the books. These are the only trace files I'll be opening up in here today. So let me show you some of the streamlining. If you're familiar with, of course, applying a display filter, a saved display filter. On the left-hand side of the display filter area, we have the little bookmark symbol, and when you just simply click on that, instead of going into another window, having to open up another window to look at available filters, here we have a list of default filters showing here. This is also where you can go and manage your display filters and your filter expressions. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see that you have your forward arrow, and that's how you apply a display filter. And then once you've applied a number of display filters, you can do the drop-down to see the last display filters. So some of that may feel very comfortable and familiar to you. But let me show you one that I think is just so much better. And that is working with the columns. You know, I live in the world of adding columns to Wireshark. So in this particular trace file, this is my HTTP-WinPCAP trace file. I'm going to expand the HTTP section here, and I'm interested in adding a column for the host field right here. So I'm going to right mouse click just as we've always done, and I'm going to say apply as column. So there is my new host column. Now what happens in the columns and manipulation of the columns is if you right mouse click on the column heading, you'll see that you have the choices directly from this column. All your column list will show up here. There we can see host. So before we had to go into one further level to say whether we wanted to hide columns or display columns, and now it's directly from the point where you right mouse click. And that is a lot faster if you're like me and you constantly are adding columns, hiding columns you're not interested in constantly and in your analysis. So that I felt like was a big positive change. You'll also notice a lot of streamlining in the different graphs that come up and statistics that come up. For example, under flow graph, we're going to go to statistics and flow graph. When you used to click on this, you would get a window that came up and asked you your flow graph settings. Not anymore. Now all of those flow graph settings are actually sitting in the bottom of the flow graph, so that if you didn't want the default settings, then you could go and change them. And I think that that's brilliant, because we had a lot of graphs where we were constantly being asked, or a lot of statistics, I should say, do you want to filter? Do you want to filter? Do you want to filter? It's like, stop already. I always bring it up without the filter, and I can work on filtering later. So this is really nice to just start bringing up statistics and not be stopped right away with a question regarding, do you want to do the filtering? I also want to mention that preferences moved. So there's been a lot of cleanup of what Gerald defined as clutter. I would never define it as clutter, Gerald, but they defined it as clutter up on the main toolbar. You know, the preferences setting, we were always familiar with the screwdriver and the wrench crossing each other, and it would sit right next to the coloring rules button. Well, those things really don't necessarily belong up there. Preferences really belongs under edit. I completely understand this, that we go to edit and preferences now. So that's where you'll find your new preferences window. In addition, if you want to do anything with coloring rules, which I'm going to show you something really cool with coloring rules in just a little bit. But if you want to change any coloring rules or see the default list of coloring rules, you can go to View and Coloring Rules. That's really where that should be. And here we have it. You'll see some changes with the functionality here. We can see on the bottom left-hand corner, if you want to add a coloring rule, simply press the plus. And if you want to remove one, you press the minus. For some reason, folks, I made a coloring rule and I was like, I can't figure out how to get rid of it. Well, I don't know. I was having a problem. I didn't see the minus on the other side, which is kind of scary. Okay, so all of this is cleaned up here, and you'll see some new icons. Another thing that you're going to see is a lot of keyboard shortcuts in Wireshark. So if we go to the edit window, we can see that a lot of these keyboard shortcuts are listed in here. And if you want to get the master list of all the keyboard shortcuts available in Wireshark, you can now go to Help, About Wireshark, and then you'll see we have a new tab in here for keyboard shortcuts. So for those of you who are power users and love to use keyboard shortcuts, look at that list right there for you. Excellent. I think.
Can I point something out?
Oh, yes. Let me bring up that window again.
Sure. Okay, this is just for the main window. A lot of the dialogues, like the IO graph dialog, have keyboard shortcuts as well. In that dialog, you would right-click on the graph to get a list of shortcuts.
Remind me to show that, because I'm going to bring up the IO graph in a little bit, Gerald. I'll try to remember to show them the keyboard shortcut pop-up window.
Right.
All right, so this is very nice that we have all the keyboard shortcuts for the main window located in one spot. Let me show you what's changed with capture options. Now I'm going to close this trace file, and you'll notice that we had the main screen here when I was showing it earlier. These are called spark lines on the main screen, and the spark lines are nice because they can quickly show you which one of your interfaces you are seeing traffic on. You can double click on one of those spark lines and it will begin the process of capturing the traffic. Now I don't need the host column, so I'm just going to right mouse click and get rid of it. It's so much faster, Gerald, manipulating columns. I love that. So we're looking at the traffic right now in the background from this GoToWebinar session from my presenter station. This is all of the traffic being generated. I will stop this capture process. I also want to mention that in the previous versions in the GTK interface, we had some more buttons dealing with capture. Hey, Gerald, I can hear your typing madly.
Oops.
I don't know if you want to just,
Sorry.
I don't know how loud it is for the audience, sorry. But in the previous versions, we had we had more buttons up here in the capture options area. We had the capture interface button leading off, and now pretty much everything is done with the gear button here, which is our capture options button. When we bring up the capture options window, we can see again we have spark lines right here, and we now have tabs across the top to define things that are not probably used as often as just someone starting a capture. So the output area is where we define we want to capture to a file, and of course we have our file set capability and ring buffer in here. And then under options is where we can define whether we want to update the list of packets in real time? Do we want network name resolution, etc.? And we can define an auto stop condition in here. So that has been changed a bit. We don't have the second option for looking at the interfaces. Again, I'm going to continue without saving. Again, these are called spark lines right here, and just double-clicking on any one of those spark lines will begin the capture process. I'd like to take you now over into related packets, and I think this is really interesting and different, and I can see people with a little bit of confusion on this, but I want to explain how this works. On the left-hand side, we have the number column, but to the left of the actual number, you'll see these indicators of related packets. What shows up on the left-hand side in the related packets column is dependent on what you have clicked on in the packet list pane. So it will show something different depending on which packet is selected. If you select a DNS packet, then the related packets column is going to show you the DNS response relating to that. So we can see there's the DNS reply for winpcap.org. If I click on the SYN packet, you'll notice that my related packets column on the left-hand side shows that this is the beginning of the stream, and wherever there's another stream showing up in the middle, it'll go to ... and then we have the solid line showing us that we have some additional communications within that stream. The end of the stream, we can see that easily because the bar goes across at the end. Here's an interesting one. If you select a GET request, you will see some dots showing up on this line. You see the line coming through, and then we have dots. Well, this is the OK, and this is actually the reassembled OK. So if you have your TCP settings defined where you want to use TCP reassembly, the last packet of the reassembled download will contain the response code. So it's showing you this is the last packet of the item you've asked for, the default page. I asked Gerald yesterday, I said, there's some confusion. Well, how would I know that the reason for this little dot over here? And he mentioned a great answer here, which is in order for this bar to be created, there must be some relationship information in the packet you selected. So if I go to my GET request, and I look inside the GET request, I can see that it's telling me the response is in frame 20. That's why it puts the dot there. And then it says the next request, the next HTTP request is in frame 22. And sure enough, frame 22 has a dot in it. So that really helps. I want to make sure people understand, though, that this packet, number 20 there, does not have the OK in it. This is a reassembled protocol data unit. So if you are like me and you often turn off TCP's allow subdissector to reassemble TCP streams, then you would see that packet number 8 will show up as the OK. So that really depends on how you set your TCP protocol preference. Do you use reassembly? All right, so that's showing you the DNS relationship, the relationship between the GETs and the OKs. And even if I just pick a 200 OK, look at all these dots. Well, what would all these dots be possibly? These are the other packets of the reassembled sets that are all being listed here. Right. So I think that that's really nice, especially if you have intertwined communications. Really helps you understand which stream you are looking at. Don't forget, for those of you that do stream work, you can also add a column for stream index. Apply that as a column, and that may help you also detect when you're in and out of streams. Now let's talk about the intelligent toolbar, the intelligent scroll bar, excuse me. I have to move a... Gerald, is there anything else you want to say about this, the related packets area here?
Can you guys hear me okay? I had to mess with my audio settings. Okay, great. As Laura was saying, the related packet indicator isn't especially new. It's just that we're exposing plumbing that was down in the protocol detail before. So like she said, whenever you see something on the left column, a little symbol, it usually means there's something down in the packet, in the protocol tree that it corresponds to.
Yeah. So that really helped me, Gerald, because I was seeing a number of, look at right now, I'm highlighting a 200 OK and there's all these other dots. It's like, what's the relationship here? Oh, these are other, there's a request following that and another 200 OK. So you start to see that relationship and looking inside the packets, like you said, to see all these, it's basically all this stuff, all these hyperlinks that we see, all of those in a graphical format right on that related packets area.
Yeah, and the reason for the related packets and the intelligent scroll bars, one of the things that drove that is Han-Sung Bae, our CTO, does occasional training, and he likes to point out that humans are really good at pattern recognition. And so kind of the driver here was putting up some patterns for people to kind of pick out in the corner of their eye and pick up on that. And hopefully that will help people to get down to problems more quickly.
Yeah. So the intelligent scroll bar is on the right-hand side, and sorry, but I'm just going to redo my screen so that I'm pulling this just so I can have my cursor kind of on the outside. I just want to pull it in a little bit on the right-hand side. But this scroll bar that you see on the right-hand side, the scroll bar that we use to get up and down through the packet list, you'll notice that we have some coloring directly on this scroll bar. So this is the intelligent scroll bar. You'll notice a little blue line right here, and that blue line is the indicator of where I have selected a packet. So if I change and select a different packet, I can see the blue line directly up here. You'll also notice some coloring in the background here where I have some gray showing up on my intelligent scroll bar, and those are packets that are colored by the coloring rule for UDP communications. Remember, if you ever want to know why a packet is colored a certain way, you can expand the frame section of the packet and it will tell you the coloring rule name and the coloring rule string that packet matches. I want to open up a little more interesting trace file and show you how you can use that intelligent scroll bar, and then I'll show you how you can use it with the coloring rules. So I'm going to open up a trace file called http-a. So in this trace file, without even doing any filters, I can already see by looking at the intelligent scroll bar. I have a section here on the intelligent scroll bar that indicates we have some black coloring on some packets in this trace file. We have one block up here. We have a couple of stripes down here. And I can move the scroll bar directly to that spot, and we can see previous segment not captured, duplicate acknowledgements out of order at that point. And then if I want to see what went on at this point of the trace file, I can just bring the scroll bar thumb down to that point and see what's going on at that moment. So this does help us quickly see the points of interest within a trace file. No, none of this stuff where people are just scrolling down like this anymore. People know I don't like scrolling at all. There's always a better way to get the information, and with the intelligent scroll bar, it's very quick that we can just jump to the spots of interest. Just pull that thumb to the points where you see the coloring rule. I want to show you something interesting you can do with this intelligent scroll bar from the point of security. So I'm going to open up a trace file of traffic from a compromised host. This trace file is sec-sick client. And in this trace file, we have a bot-infected host. At the beginning of the trace file, we have some issues here. We can see this black background, and on the intelligent scroll bar, there it is right up at the top. We also see a huge block down here where we have the black background showing up in our intelligent scroll bar. But what we can do is we can further differentiate items in that intelligent scroll bar by putting in coloring rules. So let's say I wanted to differentiate between the black background that we see for TCP retransmissions and the black background that we see for ICMP destination unreachable port unreachables. I'm going to add a coloring rule for the ICMP traffic. So I'm simply going to go up to View and Coloring Rules. And we already have a black background for ICMP errors. But what I want to do is I want to pull out specific types of ICMP traffic and make it my but ugly orange color. So I'm going to add a new coloring rule. And, oh, I should have mentioned this to you before, Gerald. New coloring rules are popping to the bottom. We might want to pop those to the top. So I'm going to type in icmp.type =3 ampersand icmp.code =3. I'm specifically interested in ICMP destination unreachable response packets. And the destination unreachable response packets I'm interested in are the port unreachables. So these would be service refusals or things like that for a UDP-based app. So I'm just going to give it a name of ICMP 3/3. And I want to define the background color of this coloring rule to be orange. Now we used to have to pop into the colors and we would type in a color name or we would put in a hex code. And what we can do now is just simply click on the background color and I can see that orange is right there. And I'm done. That's all I need to do. That is a lot faster than sitting there and typing in the name orange. I'm going to click and drag this one to the top of my list. If you drag up to the top of the list and it doesn't go all the way to the top, just pull the one above it right below it and that'll pop it to the top. It keeps, the reason why my scroll bar, horizontal scroll bar keeps scrolling to the right-hand side is because I have a really long ruled name in there and it tries to fit that on the screen. So now I've got ICMP type 3 code 3 that should be colored orange. It will be colored orange not only in the packet list pane but also on my intelligent scroll bar. So we'll say OK. And I do notice, Gerald, that I need to refresh my trace file, reload the trace file to make this work, just to let you know. So I'm going to reload. And now look at my intelligent scroll bar. I can easily differentiate between the black backgrounds that would be from the retransmissions and the colors that indicate I have ICMP type 3 code 3 in there. So you can use that intelligent scroll bar in conjunction with additional coloring rules to call your attention to all sorts of traffic in the trace file. I think that that's really an excellent way to use the intelligent scroll bar. All right, so now I'd like to talk about translations, and I know Gerald can add something here. But first of all, let's go and see what translations are available for this version of Wireshark. We need to go into. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Can I add one thing about the scroll bars?
Yeah.
The number of packets that you see in the scroll bar correspond to the number of physical pixels you have on your screen. So if you need to tell your boss you need a retina display, this is the reason you need a retina display.
Awesome. And not just one, but really 2 or 3 monitors would be best. Don't you think, Gerald?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. You know what, Gerald? I am going to document the ideal setup for Wireshark because when we start talking about comparing the statistics, I'm telling you, if you have that second monitor with all your stats windows open, I just think that there's a really great way to justify having multiple monitors for your analysis system. Okay, so let's talk about translations. First of all, let me show you where you can see the languages that are available for Wireshark. It's in the Preferences window. And remember, to get to Preferences now, we go to Edit, Preferences. And the very first window that comes up is Appearance. And at the bottom here, you'll see Language. The default is to use your system setting, but these are all the languages that are currently available for Wireshark at this time. Now, I'm going to choose Chinese, and I don't speak Chinese. I can't read Chinese. So before you do something like that, make sure you know how to get back into this Preferences window. I had a problem at one point doing this, and so, all right, so I'm going to choose Chinese, and I'll say OK. Now, there's no apply button here, folks. When you say OK, it's going to apply this immediately. We can see that my menu is now all in Chinese. You can see that I have my hints there for the keyboard shortcuts. We can also see the display filter hints in Chinese. If we go under the Edit menu item and we go across all of these, we can see the translation has been done, which is very nice. I'm going to try to get back to English now. I know that it's under the Edit window and it's the last item. And if you, excuse me, if you know your keyboard shortcuts, you can use your keyboard shortcuts to pop over there. There it is in Chinese. And I know that the last item on this list is to use the system settings. And I'll say OK. And now I'm back where I was before. Now I know, Gerald, that there is a link here for people to find out more information about the translation process. Do you want to add anything to what's going on there?
Sure. The translation effort is actually led by one of our core developers, Alexis Legout. And if you want to help out with the translation effort, you're more than welcome to. And you can go ahead and contact me, and I'll put you in touch with Alexis, unless you know how to get hold of him directly. But yeah, if you go to that URL, you can see the amount of, basically the percentage of translation strings that are done for each language for Wireshark. And people can go in there and request new languages. In fact, over the past few days, we've gotten a bunch of requests for new languages. So yeah, right now if you scroll down, you can see we're at 100% or nearly 100 on several languages, and we're doing well on several others.
That's amazing. Now, was that translation made easier by going to Qt?
Yes.
The Qt framework?
Yeah, Qt has its own set of translation tools. It has a nice GUI application for translating strings for projects and things like that. And it really did help out.
That's excellent. That's a big thing. In fact, that's incredible that it's coming out with so many translations already available, so many different languages already available.
Yeah, this actually caught me by surprise. I didn't. People have been talking about translating Wireshark for years, but once we got all the tools in place, it just really took off.
That tells you what a global audience there is for Wireshark, which is excellent. Okay, now I'm going to take everybody into the graphing improvements, and we're going to start out with the I/O graph. I'm going to open up a more interesting trace file, and if you've been into any of my classes, you know that http-download-bad is one of my favorite trace files because it has 3 separate problems in it. It has high path latency, it has packet loss throughout, which is recovered through selective acknowledgements, and it also has a Windows 0 condition inside the trace file. Already, by looking at the intelligent scroll bar, you can see that we have a lot of points where we have issues. And again, if I wanted to differentiate the coloring rules so I could tell where we have packet loss versus a Windows 0 condition, I can do that and easily see, looking at the scroll bar, where we have those particular problems. But in here, I'm going to open up statistics and I/O graph. And this is quite a bit different. The graphs, I think, Gerald, the graphs, very early on you were working on the graphs. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, the graph work.
Yeah.
You sound tired when you say that. But I think it's really impressive because, by looking at this I/O graph, just the default setting, I can already see that there's a relationship between a drop in throughput and an increase in TCP issues at this particular point. The first default graph line is all packets, and then the one past that is will be the TCP errors. So I can see, and in fact, for me, I would like TCP errors to be just in red because people associate red as the, problems, but I'll just leave it back at the default settings here. All right. Oh, I will put it in red since we're in here. There. Okay. So when I'm looking at this, I can easily see that this problem, this drop in throughput right here at this point in the graph, this is where I have an increase in TCP issues. This drop correlates with these TCP issues. This drop correlates with these TCP issues. And of course, I can click on those points in the graph, and it will take me to that point in the trace file, which if I go to a high point where everything looks good, let me see if I can get to a good spot in the trace file. Okay, so this is where it's going up. Everything looks good. I have green in the background, which is the HTTP coloring rule. Go to a bad point, and I can see I have the black background. We've got some packet loss and recovery at that point. Go to a high point where it's going up. Everything's great. Go to the point where it's dropping, and I can see everything's, we can see we've got some packet loss issues. We've got duplicate ACKs going out. So you can correlate these things. And one of the things Gerald mentioned was the right mouse click function in the I/O graphs. This is showing you some additional keyboard shortcuts, and these are ones that are available specifically in the I/O graph. Here's another thing I really like about the I/O graph, what has changed, and that's the ability to move ourselves up here, and you can plot the number 0 now. So we'll see this when we come up into the TCP stream graphs in a moment. But some of the changes, if we double click on any one of these lines, you can see that we have an option for diamond now, which is new for graphing a line. Graphing, an item. We can see that we have diamonds. So there's additional functionality. In addition, we can add our own graph lines. So I'm going to add a graph line here, and I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to say that this is going to be just window update packets. And the filter expression would be tcp.analysis.window_update. And I'm going to, let's see, do I want it to be a line? No, I'm going to say that I want this to be the bar, and I want the color to be green because I think, window updates are good. It's an indication that we have more buffer space at the receive side. So I'm going to turn that on, but notice that the window updates, the number of window updates is hard to see because just a few window updates are being graphed against all of the packets. So we can click on the button to go to a logarithmic scale, which makes it easier to see the points where window updates occur, and we have the legend explaining to us what's going on in the graph. This is really nice. Just having a legend, Gerald, is great. I mean, because I can give that to a customer to explain what types of things are going on, start building some really nice graphs. You can also select a line and say that you want to copy that line. And that's very nice because maybe you want to do just a slight variation of something, change the source address. I'll get rid of that copied one. Is there any limit, Gerald, to the number of items that I can graph in the I/O graph now? Anything that you know of? Gerald? Are you there, Gerald?
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, that's okay.
I think the limit right now is 250,000, although that's kind of an artificial and arbitrary limit.
That's all?
We'd probably increase that. Well,
if you get a complaint, somebody saying, I really need 251,000 lines graphed, I can't even imagine. But
well, a few months ago, I got a bug report saying that Wireshark was loading a trace file slow, and he submitted the trace file. It had 8 million packets in it.
And slow is relative too. We call that lunchtime and break time and coffee time. Gosh. All right. So, you probably notice here that a lot of work has gone into the I/O graphs. I want to show you something really cool that you can do with the I/O graphs. I'm going to get rid of this window update line and bring this back to simply all packets and TCP errors. I'm going to use, instead of diamond, I'm going to use bar for the TCP errors, and I'm going to also get rid of logarithmic scale. I'm going to pull it back to its default setting. Now on something like this, instead of packets per tick, I prefer to use bits per tick. So just simply double clicking on this line will allow you to change your y-axis value. But this is something I'm going to show you, and I just love this with these two trace files. Here is HTTP download bad. This graph shows that we have obviously some TCP issues that are affecting our throughput. I have another trace file called http-download-good, and I want to compare the graph on download bad with download good. Watch what happens in the title bar here when I go and open the other trace file and come back to this graph. I'm not going to close this graph. I'm simply going to open a different trace file. So I'll choose http-download-good. Now let me toggle so that we have the other graph window in the foreground. You'll see it says http-download-bad closed. That file is closed. And now I can go into statistics and I/O graph on HTTP download good, and I can place these two graphs side by side to compare the I/O graphs from when things were relatively good, not great, but relatively good, and when things were bad. I'm going to change my bar color to red here because I like them to match. On the left-hand side, we can see the difference in the Y graph, which is automatically generated. And I can see the change right here in the Y graph, Gerald, that rather than go a billion zeros, that has been changed. And now I've got an open trace file that I've got a graph on, and I've got a closed trace file that I have a graph on. And I can compare these two side by side, even by looking at the values that were defined in the Y graph. This is a really nice feature, Gerald. And what's interesting is some people have started playing with the new version of Wireshark, wrote to me and said they thought that was a bug, that it was keeping the graph open. It's like, no, that's a feature.
Yeah, this is an expectation that we're going to have to just,
yes.
I don't know how we're going to get past it, but it tends to catch people off guard.
Yes, they expect that when you close the trace file, that every, I wonder if that should be or could be a setting if someone prefers to have all of their statistics windows and graphs closed when the trace file is closed versus keeping them open. I don't know.
If there's enough demand, I kind of assume that you'd want to keep the window, or that it would be useful to keep the window open.
Especially if you have that second monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be a matter of educating people how to use this to their advantage. So I can certainly work on that. Maybe write an article or something showing how it can be used, and people will start taking advantage of it. I don't know. I'm sure we'll get some feedback from folks that are watching the webinar here. I'd also like to show people the differences in TCP stream graph. Is there anything else that you want me to show on these graphs, Gerald?
No, not off the top of my head.
Okay. All right.
I think you've covered everything, yeah.
Okay. All right. So now I've got the trace file HTTP download good open in the background, and I'm going to take you into the TCP stream graphs. And there have also been a number of changes in the TCP stream graphs. Now, in the past, in a TCP stream graph, I would always tell people, make sure that you pick a packet going in that is a data packet. So we're graphing the flow of data. If you picked an acknowledgement packet before opening up a stream graph, you would have the most boring graph in the world. So if I selected frame number 16 right here, where it's just an acknowledgement packet, and then I went up to statistics, TCP stream graphs, and I really like the TCP trace graph. That's my favorite of this group. If I open this up, I would see a very boring graph. And the reason is I'm graphing traffic going in the wrong direction. We can see that this up at the top, it's telling us which direction it is graphing. And that's not the direction that data is flowing. So we're really just graphing acknowledgements, and that's not what I wish to do. But down here in the bottom right-hand corner, we have a button to switch the direction. That's it. That's what I wanted to see, and I wanted to graph that point. Again, you can right mouse click on this graph, and you can see all of the keyboard shortcuts available to you. We also can zoom in. I'm just doing my scroll up on my mouse, and I can zoom in, and I can see right here at the beginning the green line going across the top here. That's the available buffer space at the receiver, and all of these little blue I-bars. I don't know what you call them, Gerald. I call them I-bars, but these blue I-bars, we get to a point where the amount of data being transferred meets the amount of available buffer space, and when those two meet, we have a Windows 0 condition. That Windows 0 condition, we can see how long that lasts in the trace file. For this whole time, there's no data being transferred. Ick. In an ideal situation, we should see what looks like almost a beautifully smooth line going from the bottom left-hand corner to the upper right-hand corner. And we can see we have an issue right here in this graph as well. You click on a point in the graph, and it will take you to that spot in the trace file. That's where we have packet loss occurring. We have the recovery happening with selective acknowledgements. And we can click on any point in this graph and see this. Here's another nice thing about the TCP stream graphs. Let's say I'm looking at this and I decide, I really want to focus on a different graph. I want to change over and go to the throughput. graph. Bottom left-hand corner, we have the ability to quickly move to the different graph. We don't have that separate window sort of hidden in the background as we did with the earlier versions of Wireshark, the GTK interface. Now it's directly on this line, and we can see the throughput. At this point in the trace file, throughput just drops. And this is the other point in the trace file where we have an issue. I'll take you over to the window scaling section, and now this one, I'm seeing the window scaling advertised from the server. That's the sender of the data. I'm going to switch the direction to see the window scaling advertised by the receiver, the client, and we can see this client drop its advertised TCP receive buffer constantly all the way until it gets down to, and I love this, that it can graph the number 0. Right there is a Windows 0 condition. Exactly. Actually, in this one, if I go in closer, that's not a Windows 0, that's a window low in this trace file. Look how close that is to the number 0. If you open up HTTP download bad, that goes right down to the number 0. HTTP download good is an almost Windows 0 condition. And again, remember, if you right mouse click, you have the option of seeing all these different options that you can use with this graph. I'll take you over to the time sequence Stevens, and notice it's a pretty boring graph. In that case, switch the direction, and we'll see what's going on. And the last graph that I want to show you in this set, let's see, the round trip time graph. Now notice we're looking at the round trip time in milliseconds here. We can see these points where we have these jumps in our round trip times. And again, when you click on that point in the trace file, or in the graph, it will take you to that spot in the trace file. We can see the issue right here where we have a sudden increase in round trip times. Just happens that at this point we also have packet loss and packet loss recovery using selective acknowledgements. So these are really nice. When you choose Save As, you'll see that the default is in PDF format. You have some other options in here. I'm kind of disappointed that we don't have the option of the .ico again, Gerald. I noticed that we can't save it as an icon, but just kidding. That was weird. That was really weird in the previous version. All right.
Well, I almost didn't. JPEG is an option due to the graphing library we're using, but I almost didn't put it in there because I hate saving constant color pictures as a JPEG because you get lossy artifacts.
Oh,
but
yeah.
If you really want to use JPEG, you can.
Okay.
I don't suggest it.
Yeah, PNG is really nice. You know?
Yeah.
That's why I use
or PDF.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'll go ahead and I'm just going to close down this window. I'm not going to go through and save that. I don't, let's see. I don't have the questions up. Gerald, are you getting some good questions about this version? I don't know if you've been looking at the questions window that's coming up, but are there any questions you'd like to answer to everybody in general, or have you been answering those in the background already to everyone? Gerald?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I've been trying to answer them in the background, but then I mute myself. So
I know. That's okay.
No, a couple of people have asked about saving your graph settings, and your graph settings and the conversation and endpoint windows. Those get saved with your configuration profile. So I don't know if you were going to talk about profiles, but maybe it would help to show the profile feature.
Sure. Let me just take you quickly to the profiles then. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll notice this whole time I've been working in the default profile, and I'm a big believer in customizing Wireshark. So I'm going to go down here to the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to bring this up if you can't quite see it right here, and I'm going to right mouse click on the last column of the status bar. I'm going to select New and build a new profile, and I'm going to call this Demo and say OK. Can't rename directory. No, that's interesting. Did you see that, Gerald?
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
It didn't create it either.
Um,
Hmm.
I know someone reported a bug about this recently.
Um,
I'll have to
my,
go see if we got it fixed.
let's see if, aha. So the difference was I clicked the plus after doing that rather than the OK directly. But we can work on that. Anyway, all right, so I'll write down what I did. And let's see, there it's coming up to the mine. No such, let's see if it shows it.
Interesting.
New profile is there. Well, I'm just going to go into new profile, folks. And if they see stuff like this, a lot of these bugs people are noticing. Certainly there's Bugzilla. People can report bugs that they see. How do you want to receive bugs and things?
The best place is Bugzilla because that lets us track the not only the bug, but it lets us track the process of fixing the bug because our code review system, when it's working correctly, it integrates with Bugzilla so that when we check in a change that fixes the bug, it's noted in the bug tracker and so on.
Okay. Okay, so I've just brought you into a new profile, and I hear that some people are talking about an echo, and I'm starting to hear an echo also. And I'm not sure where that's coming from. Now I don't hear the echo. Do you hear the echo now?
It looks like it might be my mic, so I'll try to keep it muted.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, guys. Okay, so bottom right-hand corner, I've basically brought myself to a new profile. And you can already do this kind of work with the current version of Wireshark 1.12.8 and a number of the previous versions of Wireshark 1.12.8. But what happens now is that when I'm working in Wireshark and I'm adding columns, let's say, let me just add a couple of columns here. Let's say I want the calculated window size, calculated window size column. I'm going to right mouse click, apply this as a column there. All of this is being saved within this profile setting. So this profile will have any coloring rules that I create and save. It will have any columns that I save. It will have the settings for the font sizes and all these different things. If you ever want to know where Wireshark is saving your profiles, you can go to Help About Wireshark and then Folders, and you'll see your profiles are saved in your Personal Configurations folder. All of these things that you see at the main level when you go to your personal configuration folder, these are changes that have been made to your default profile. But I have a profiles directory, and there's my new profile. And there's my preferences file. My settings for my profile are sitting inside of my preferences file, or if you create and save display filters, you'll have a defilters file in there. You have color filters in there. You have lots of different files that deal with your settings. I'm just going to open this up with, wow, Notepad, my preferences file. Let me change the font so you can see a little more on every line. There. So these are my settings for this particular profile. What was I going to show them, Gerald? I can't remember why did I go in here? I'm just, a TCP stream window. I guess, were we going to talk about I think we were talking about the windows. Oh, there, you can see there's right here, there's my packet list pane. These are all the columns that I added. There's my calculated window size column. Was there something in particular that I was going to show them, Gerald? It's all a blur.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, you know what? If you folks remember, you could just put it in the questions area, and I'll try to do a little step-by-step or document on that. All right. So, Gerald, question for you. What are we looking at as far as final release date? Because I know if you folks have not gone out to wireshark.org, let me take folks out here. If you go out to wireshark.org on the left-hand side, you'll see the download button. Here's the current stable release set, and then below that is the development release for the version I've been working on. Oh, I'm going to sneeze, sorry. Oh, so close. What do you think the release date, the final release date might be? Do you have any feeling for that? Because I know you don't want to release it until these little bug things are taken care of.
I'm really hoping for next Wednesday, which is the 18th.
Ah,
Um,
wow.
If we do have any serious bugs that stop the release, the next opportunity is in early December on the 1st or the 2nd due to the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday.
Okay.
So I'm really hoping for next Wednesday for the release.
Okay. Oh, there is one more feature I wanted to show folks. You know, if you take a look at that article that you'll see the link on the right-hand side, the PDF file that I have available for you folks, you'll see a ton of different items that have changed and some of the features that I think are really cool that have been altered. But there is one that I do want to show you. I want to open up a trace file and show you following streams, what's changed. So I'm going to open up a trace file called tr-2hosts.pcapng. And in this trace file, I'm going to get rid of my calculated window size field. I don't need that. But in this trace file, we have somebody who's just doing an FTP operation, and they're downloading some file in this trace file. So I have a line where it says FTP data, and I'm going to right mouse click and just simply say that I want to follow the TCP stream. Okay, here's the TCP stream building. It'll build here in just a moment. There. Okay. So this is just the data stream that's available to you. But here's what we have down here below. You can do a find in there. So destroy. See if that term appears anywhere inside of this data stream, which is really nice. Having the ability to do a find and also the ability to switch the streams on the right-hand side. Maybe that wasn't the stream that I wanted to follow. So I'm going to go to stream 5. Okay, I can see stream 5 is the command channel. I'm going to go up to, let's say, stream, there. Oops, I closed that window, sorry. I didn't close, I clicked outside of it. So there's stream number 5, and some of these are larger downloads, so it takes it a moment to, I don't have a stream 6, do I? Hang on, I think I just told I want to go up to stream 6, and I don't think I have. Oh, I do have a stream 6, there it is. It's a data stream. So you can go in here and you can just simply click up arrow and down arrow to move through the streams. Keep in mind, though, it's got to rebuild the communications from each of the streams. So this is a big data stream, stream number 4 in this trace file. I think that's a really nice feature to not have to close down this window and pick a different stream. We can see that somebody's downloading the directory structure. So we can see what's happening at each of the streams. Stream 0, of course, is the command stream. But that makes a big difference in speed. Having those things right in our, it's inside of each of our graphs, I think makes a huge difference in working with Wireshark. Okay, Gerald, do you have any last things that you want to mention to folks?
A quick minor note: when you're going into when you're opening up the preferences in Notepad, a couple of people mentioned that it was the IO graph settings that you were trying to pull up.
Oh, is that what I was? Okay.
But while you're doing that, the major thing I want to point out is that the code that's driving all these features, a lot of it's the same code that the Wireshark developers have written before for the features in the GTK UI, and they did a great job, and it's great code. It's just that the thing we're doing with the Qt UI is kind of polishing that and kind of reducing the number of clicks it takes to get to that code. So it might look like a lot of things have changed, and a lot of things have changed, but a lot of the underlying code is still there and still the same. So it's in many ways the same Wireshark that you're already used to.
It's just being exposed, as you said before, some of these things, like the related packets information. We always could see that inside of the packets, but now it's just visible to us and much faster to view. Okay, so we were going to show the IO graph settings inside of here. Is that what we were going to do?
Can you? It's in a different file. It should be in the.
Oh wait, you know what? I don't think I saved my. Well, let's see. I don't have anything in this profile because we were working in the other, I was working in the default, I think, maybe, when I was doing that, but you can see there's the file right there, IO graphs.
Yeah, IO graphs.
There it is. So I'll go ahead and open that one up. And there we go. The beauty of this, though, I think, Gerald, is the fact that I can actually build a set of IO graphs that I really, really like, save the settings, and send those out to people and say, okay, here's a graph that graphs all these different TCP issues on separate lines. Here's a graph that graphs all of the errors for HTTP, SMB, SIP, DNS, all these different things, and I can distribute an IO graphs file. Ooh.
Yep.
I think that's great. Some people asked about the buttons. Also, we still have the buttons available to us. A lot of you know I absolutely love the filter expression buttons. So I'm going to go up here and just make a button. Let's say all ICMP traffic. I just want to pull up all ICMP traffic in the trace file. I'll pull up ICMP. Hey, Gerald, I can't remember this. ICMP, do I have to do or ICMP v6, or does ICMP just take both of them? Isn't ICMP just v4? I'd have to test it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's ICMP v6.
Yeah, I think we have to do them separately.
In fact, since it's green and you're typing ICMP v6, then yeah, it's.
I just couldn't remember, like on TCP retransmissions, it shows up our spurious and our fast retransmissions as well as just standard. I couldn't remember if ICMP would pull up the v6 ones. I don't have a lot of traces with a lot of v6 ones. But on the right-hand side, if you see the button right here on the right-hand side, that's the way we add a button, our filter expression button. So I'm going to call this simply ICMP and say OK. And now on the right-hand side, you can see I have a button that will pull up all ICMP traffic. Let me open up a trace file that's interesting and has some ICMP traffic. It's just sec-nessus. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clear out my filters first completely, and then click my ICMP button, and these are all the ICMP packets visible. So that's still inside of there. And I believe, aren't these buttons still in the preferences file, Gerald, at this time? Yes. But someday, I bet they're going to be in a separate file.
We have talked about that, and it's something we do need to do.
At some point.
I don't have a timeline on that. Yeah.
I mean, it's not a big deal. People, we all know how to go in and look at the preferences file. It's just a standard text file. So we can go in and just paste in buttons that are released. So in general, folks, I think that there are a lot of great improvements that will speed up your analysis sessions. Take a look at the file that's available on the right-hand side in the handouts section on your control panel. The file name is Wireshark v2 review_Chappell.pdf. That has a list of not just the items I've shown you in here, but also talks a bit about what you can do with the conversations window, the expert filtering, and exporting objects. You can now export TFTP. The TCP preferences, thank you, Gerald, for calculate conversation timestamps being on by default.
Well, that wasn't me. That was one of the other developers.
Well, thank you, whomever that was, because that was fabulous. And HTTP2 statistics are in there now, and multicast stream statistics have changed. So there are quite a few other changes that we haven't gotten to show you in this one, but I think you'll be pleasantly pleased with the direction that Wireshark version 2 is going. I want to remind everybody before we finish up here that this whole entire session has been recorded. I'm just going to edit the recording at the beginning and the ending just to clean it up, and then we'll make it available online. You will receive an email with the link to the recording of this webinar once it's uploaded. But before we leave, I do want to thank all of the Wireshark developers that have put so much time into Wireshark version 2. And of course, Gerald, thank you very much for heading up this entire project. Also,
thank you. And actually, I'd like to interject. As Laura said, and I want to echo what she said. I cannot thank the development team enough, and I can't thank the user community enough. It is a joy and an honor to be able to work on this.
Well, we're very lucky to have you heading up this project. It's just amazing how different that Wireshark version 2 is, and yet how quickly you could just melt right into starting to work with it. All right, I will go through the questions after this session also. If you have some questions in there that didn't get answered, I'll try to get back to each of you on your questions and find an answer for you if possible. I also want to thank Riverbed very much for sponsoring this event. When you leave in the survey, we will ask you if you want more information about the Packet Analyzer, formerly known as Pilot. I wish we had some time to show you Pilot. Maybe we'll do that in a separate webinar. And again, thanks so much to the developers, thanks to Gerald, and thanks to all of you for joining us in today's session.
All right, and thank you, Laura.
Hey, you're welcome. I'll talk to you later, Gerald. I've got a bug list for you. All right, everybody, have a great day. Bye.